Hello, everyone. My name's Rach. I'm a very grateful, recovered alcoholic and addict, and welcome to the Infinite Power and Love book study. We are just kicking off. We left off on page 19, so we're in There is a Solution. We've just been speaking before the meeting about how brilliant this chapter is. You know, how many of us actually love it, this promise that there is a solution. We've already gone over the doctor's opinion where Dr. Silkworth explains about this mental obsession and this physical allergy and this restless, irritable, and discontented hole in my soul, the spiritual malady. And then in Bill's story, we get a main share where he is basically sharing with us what he was like, what happened, and what he is like now. We see the progression of his illness, his thinking, his drinking, and we're looking for identification. Did I feel like that? Did I drink like that? Did I behave like that? And then after that chapter, it goes down the progression of his illness, and then Ebby comes, and then we start to see how he gets well and how quickly, you know, even in hospital, he started, you know, what about these other alcoholics? What about my responsibility to the people that could die? And he starts working with others, and he gets well, and obviously, you know, that he stays well, and he becomes, you know, the co-founder of AA. And then we've got There is a Solution. So what we went over last week is pages 17, 18, and a bit of 19. And just to do a little brief overview, you know, he said that we are people who normally would not mix, but something bonds us together, this common peril. Doesn't matter who we are, where we're from, what our drinking or using looked like, our age, sexual orientation, our color, creed, none of that matters. We have one common peril, the fact that I am powerless over alcohol or drugs. My life has become unmanageable. I have lost all control. And then we've got this tremendous fact that we've got this common solution. So this beautiful promise, there is a solution. And actually, this chapter doesn't really go into the solution that much, other than on page 25, where it talks about this, you know, this amazing transformation that we go through. But what we're doing in There is a Solution is we're still building a killer case of alcoholism. So what we also covered on page 18, they reiterated that this is an illness. And it only says disease once in the big book. And that's on page 64. And it talks about it being a disease when it's talking about resentment. But it actually mentions the word illness 14 times in the big book. So it talks about, you know, this brings misunderstanding, fierce resentment, financial insecurity, disgusted friends and employers, warped lives of blameless children, sad wives and parents. So again, even though they're going to tell us what the solution is, a spiritual awakening, they're still doing this killer case of alcoholism. And on the bottom of page 18, we're talking about the sponsor, the ex-problem drinker that has found this solution, who's armed with the fact. And it goes over a list of things that they have found that works the best. You know, no attitude holier than thou, nothing except the sincere desire to be helpful. You know, they have the same difficulty, knows what they're talking about. Their whole deportment shouts that they're a man with a real or person with a real answer. So where we left off is on page 19, the second paragraph down. If we keep on the way we are going, there is little doubt that much good will result. So that's a promise, isn't it? They're saying that as long as we keep on this track of recovery, following this clear-cut direction, they're sure that good results will come, but the surface of the problem would hardly be scratched. And in the paragraph before that, they spoke about, you know, this soul vocation. So I can you know, I can work in recovery, I can work in treatment, but if I don't do this stuff for fun and for free, I can't keep my spiritual, because of the traditions, I can't be paid to take somebody through the big book. And many people have tried. And this is why the traditions are so important, because it doesn't work. This is a spiritual process. But they're saying, but the surface of the problem would hardly be scratched. Those of us who live in large cities are overcome by the reflection that close by hundreds are dropping into oblivion every day. So I don't know about you all, but when I came into recovery, I couldn't believe that this had been going on this whole time. Like churches and community huts and AA and, you know, all of the different A's, they're going on this whole time. But when you're unaware of it, you're completely unaware of it. And that's why it's so important, you know, to carry this message, carry myself in a way that represents my fellowship, even when I'm not in a meeting, you know, because it's attractive, isn't it? When somebody's well and they're living a great life. And we have this solution, we have this amazing solution. So many could recover if they had the opportunity that we have enjoyed. Now, I've squiggly underlined and highlighted, we have enjoyed, and I've put a question mark after that. Am I enjoying this? Am I enjoying my sobriety? Am I enjoying, you know, this unity, recovery, and service? I've also done a little cross-reference to page 14 on this bit, because on page 14 in Bill's story, just in the middle of the page, where it's Dr. Silkworth is talking to Bill Wilson after he's had this spiritual experience in the hospital. And he says, finally, he shook his head, saying, something has happened to you. I don't understand, but you had better hang on to it. Anything is better than the way you were. And I think that links in nicely to we have enjoyed. Am I remembering to enjoy my recovery? Am I remembering the pain and the suffering of the way things were? Because sometimes I can find myself restless, irritable, and discontented, even in my sobriety, forgetting that things are way better than how they used to be. So how then shall we present that which has been so freely given us? And I you know, I've squiggly underlined that, so freely given us. It makes me think about the woman that took me through this book and just sat with me for hours reading this book. And I know now as a sponsor that she was doing it for herself as much as she was doing it for me, if not more. And she used to say to me, Rach, you are helping me more than I am helping you. And I didn't understand it and I didn't believe it. But she so freely gave me her time on the condition that I pass this on. And in the other book study I do, we really go into the words, and we've probably got a little bit word happy, but we looked up the word present, you know, and actually it's got quite a few different meanings, doesn't it? So how then shall we present? So if I'm presenting something, it's like, how am I giving an example? How am I showing that this thing works, that we've got this solution? That's one definition of the word present. But then it's also like a gift, isn't it? It's present. I'm giving a gift of this solution. And the other word, which again is the same word but just a different meaning, is being present. I am being present in this moment, in my life, in my recovery, in this giving, in this solution. You know, so I just quite liked the fact that because we went so deeply into the words, it's like, wow, this book goes even deeper than I thought it did before, even if I'm like overthinking it slightly. If it works, then yeah. Anyway, so we have concluded to publish an anonymous volume setting forth the problem as we see it. So the anonymous volume is this book, you know, this is the 4th edition, and we now have the gift of understanding what our problem is. They put it into this book, into 164 pages. They outlined the problem, and it's only when I understand what my problem is that I'm going to fully take on the solution. Because back before this book was written, they didn't understand what alcoholism was. They just thought, you're insane. Why would you keep on doing the same thing over and over again? And we know the progression of alcoholism and addiction. It ruins lives, right? It just decays the mind and body and destroys relationships, all of the things it said on the previous page. So it's really important, and we're very lucky that it's like they've set forth the problem: alcoholism, powerlessness, unmanageability, and now they're going to start telling us what the solution is. We shall bring to the task our combined experience and knowledge. So we talk a lot in the book, and it does refer to, in the book, I can't actually remember what page it is. I think it's in the forewords. I've got to find it now because it'll bug me. Experience, strength, and hope. Let me find it. Experience, strength, and hope. Is it? I can't find it now. I won't get distracted. I'll try not to. You can clearly see that I am getting distracted. I like to know where things are, but I was right. Okay, it's in the forward to the 3rd edition, just at the bottom of the page. So it says experience, strength, hope in the forward to the 3rd edition, but here it's talking about we shall bring to the task our combined experience and knowledge. And that, you know, there is a saying, I think it was Einstein, I might be, don't quote me on it, but saying a genius is somebody who utilizes somebody else's knowledge so that they don't have to have the same, you know, all those yets, all those people that have gone before us that have said, yeah, we did try to find an easier, softer way. We couldn't find an easier, softer way, but we did this and this thing worked. So if we use that combined experience and knowledge is powerful, isn't it? And experience is powerful. This should suggest a useful program for anyone concerned with a drinking problem. And again, just to get like pernickety about the words, a program is a plan. It's a system that can be used towards a goal. So what I've got here is a clear, I love it when it reminds me what this is. They call it program for action, design for life, program for living. It's a clear set of instructions that if I want to get to the desired results, which is freedom from the bondage of self, and you know, a spiritual awakening that's going to rocket me into the 4th dimension, then I just need to follow this program. So this should suggest a useful program for anyone concerned with a drinking problem. Of necessity, there will have to be discussion of matters medical, psychiatric, social, and religious. We are aware that these matters are, from their very nature, controversial. Nothing would please us so much as to write a book which would contain no basis for contention or argument. Contention, for anybody that doesn't know, means a heated disagreement or controversy. A heated disagreement or controversy. Now, I always love to think about that. It says, we shall do our utmost to achieve that ideal. Can you even begin to imagine how and where you personally would start to write a book that would change humanity in 164 pages without offending anyone? It's just not doable. They're talking about things that affect like medical, the psychiatric, the social, and religious. these are all like the biggest factors that affect human nature. And they're like, they've squished it into like, I like to show newcomers this as well. I do it quite often. But oh, there we go. I'll just get to Bill's story. Just bear with. Sometimes, because you know, the doctor's opinion, as important as it is in Roman numerals. So I love to show newcomers that. I just say, do you know that this is 164 pages? This is going to absolutely revolutionize the whole way you behave, you think, you feel, you act in life, your reactions to life, the way you show up. And imagine we had the task of writing a book that was not going to upset anyone in all of those areas: medical, psychiatric, social, and religious. Wow, it's a magic book. It's definitely a magic book. And it was divinely written. Apparently Bill Wilson was like, you know, he was just, the pen to paper was just unbelievable. So we shall do our utmost, how humble, we shall do our utmost to achieve that ideal. Most of us sense that real tolerance of other people's shortcomings and viewpoints, and a respect for their opinions and attitudes. Opinions are attitudes which make us more useful to others. So that word, and you know, this whole sentence is like, you know, a real tolerance of other people's shortcomings. If I have to think about how often I have been wrong, I have been judgmental, I have been arrogant, I have been stubborn, I have been self-righteous, I have blagged it, I've thought I knew, I've pretended I've known. And actually, everybody's just doing the best they can. So, you know, thinking about this, like just getting that humility that everyone has their different opinions. And it tells us in the book a couple of times, you know, we have ceased fighting anything or anyone. So other people's shortcomings of view comment and respect for their opinions are attitudes which make us more useful to others. So that whole concept of being more useful to others, full of use, useful. Am I dividing? Tradition 1 is our common welfare should come first. Personal recovery depends upon AA unity. So am I dividing, or am I bringing people together? Am I, you know, putting my foot down going, yeah, well, I don't agree because, you know, I whatever, no arguments. So this is a big sentence here. Our very lives, our whole lives as ex-problem drinkers. So now we're ex-problem drinkers. We're no longer in the problem. We're getting into the solution. As ex-problem drinkers depend upon our constant thought of others and how we may help meet their needs. Service, service, service. So I did a little cross-reference here to page 77. So if we just jump over to 77, it tells me on that page what another like one sentence for the whole like program basically. On page 77, it says, our real purpose is, and it's just a few lines down, it's 3 lines down. Our real purpose is to fit ourselves to be of maximum service to God and the people about us. And back on page 20, it says our very lives as ex-problem drinkers depend upon our constant thought of others and how we may help meet their needs. So that word constant, I mean, this is all highlighted in my book, but I've underlined constant, and I just thought, how much do I constantly think of myself? How easy is it for me to think of myself? And how much, so I've also done a little cross-reference to 62, where it says, selfishness and self-centeredness is the root of my troubles. So they're starting to weave in this thread of my life as an ex-problem drinker depends on the constant thought of others and to help meet their needs. How can I get out of self? Because my selfishness is my problem. Getting into God's love and God's will and usefulness is actually the thing that's going to set me free. So it says, you may already have asked yourself, why is it that all of us became so very ill from drinking? There's that word ill again. It doesn't say diseased from drinking. It says ill. So it's a much, I don't know, it's a kinder soft, I guess it's more factual as well that this is an illness. But it doesn't sound like infection, diseased, became so very ill from drinking, question mark. Whenever I say question mark, it's because I'm asking myself, and whenever I'm taking a sponsee through, I ask them as well. Doubtless you are curious to discover how and why, in the face of expert opinion to the contrary, we have recovered from a hopeless condition of mind and body. So expert opinion, they talked about the psychiatrists, the competent physicians, competent psychiatrists who have spent time with us, but we've lied. We don't tell the truth. There's some magic in the fact that one alcoholic or addict working with another. That's the magic of it. None of us are trained, right? But contrary to expert opinion, we have recovered, past tense. I have a daily reprieve, but I can be recovered today from a hopeless, because that first step all around being powerless and my life being completely unmanageable, from a hopeless condition of mind and body. And I always like circle or squiggly underline where it says mind and body, because throughout the whole book, I mean, one day I'll count all, I could probably do it on 164, but the amount of times they refer to mind and body, it's like they're reiterating again and again. Do I understand that I have this obsession of my mind? I have this obsession that I can enjoy and control my drinking. It's an insane obsession because it's not the truth. I don't have the defense that keeps my hand from going on a hot stove. My mind lies to me, and my body just has a physical allergy. I react differently to alcohol. I set off this phenomenon of craving and I can't stop. So there's that thread again, all the way through the book, mind and body, mind and body. If you are an alcoholic who wants to get over it, question mark, I'm always asking sponsees the whole way through the book, even up until we get to step 12, because I often find that when I start the work with someone, they might be really, really, really keen. They might want to get over it. The consequences might be terrible. But once they start feeling better and getting into it, and their body and mind start to recover a little bit, do they still want to get over it? So I always ask that question. You may be already asking, what do I have to do? So here we go. Love this line. It is the purpose of this book to answer such questions specifically. So I've highlighted that, I've boxed off specifically, I've underlined it, and I've just got a couple of different references that I really like. There are probably more, but these three stand out to me. So on page XIII, so it's back in, let me just, it's the forward to the first edition. There's the first one. Thank you, Noreen. Welcome, Natalie. So the first word that jumps out of me is precisely. It's made italic. It cost a lot of money for them to change the print. And there it said on page XIII, the forward to the first edition, first paragraph, it says to show other alcoholics precisely how we have recovered is the main purpose of this book. And then on page 20 that we're on, it says, it is the purpose of this book to answer such questions specifically. That's a good word, right? Exactly, specifically, precisely. And then another cross-reference is to page 45, where in We Agnostics, and the second, or you might say third paragraph down, it says, well, that's exactly what this book is about. Its main object is to enable you to find a power greater than yourself, which will solve your problem. So we've got specifically, precisely, specifically, exactly. That's what this book is going to, that is what this book is going to teach us. So we shall tell you what we have done. So lived experience, past experience, recorded people's, what they have done in the past. We can just learn from it. Before we go into a detailed discussion, it may be well to summarize some points as we see them. So here we go. How many times have people said to us, I can take it or leave it alone? Why can't he? Why don't you drink like a gentleman or quit? That fellow can't handle his liquor. Why don't you try beer and wine? Lay off the hard stuff. His willpower must be weak. He could stop if he wanted to. She's such a sweet girl. I should think he'd stop for her sake. The doctor told him if he ever drank again, it would kill him. But there he is, all lit up again. Now, these are commonplace observations on drinkers, which we hear all the time. Back of them is a world of ignorance and misunderstanding. Ignorance and misunderstanding. So ignorance being lack of knowledge. Misunderstanding, they don't understand. And I always think of, you know, our friends, our families, the Al-Anons, you know, the medical professionals. And I think sometimes they get a little bit of a hard rap. It's like, if I struggle enough to understand my own illness, it's cunning, baffling, and powerful. I can behave in certain ways and think in certain ways, and I can know what the solution is and still choose to do something completely different. I'm confused by my own illness. So there is a massive misunderstanding, and the best way we can, you know, the best way we can help people understand is to demonstrate these principles in all our affairs, and also signpost people. You know, there is Al-Anon, there is Co-Anon. We can do H&I. We can do public information, hospitals and institutions. We can go and speak to doctors and, you know, different institutions. So we see that these expressions refer to people whose reactions are very different from ours. And again, like that paragraph that we just read, why can't he, why don't you drink like a gentleman or quit? This is what people who don't drink and think and behave like us, they don't understand. So this is how the magic works with one addict or alcoholic helping another. That's the beauty of it. We get to keep it if we give it away. And unfortunately, there is so much misunderstanding. So now we're going into the three different types here. So I've put a little 1 next to moderate drinkers have little trouble in giving up liquor entirely if they have a good reason for it. They can take it or leave it alone. Question mark. And I ask people at that point, is that you? Can you take it or leave it alone? I'm a big fat no. That is definitely not me. I cannot give it up entirely or leave it alone. Definitely take it or leave it. No. Number two, then we have a certain type of hard drinker. He may have the habit badly enough to gradually impair him physically and mentally. There's that body and mind again, physically and mentally. So I've just sort of circled that. It may cause him to die a few years before his time. If, that all important word, if a sufficiently strong enough reason, ill health, falling in love, change of environment, or the warning of a doctor becomes operative, this man can also stop or moderate. Question mark. Are you able to stop or moderate? I mean, we could do a little cross-reference there to page 44. In We Agnostics, we've got the qualifying question, which says, if when you honestly want to, you find you cannot quit entirely, or if when you start drinking, you cannot control the amount you take, you are probably alcoholic. So here it's saying that, you know, the hard drinker, if something comes up, they fall in love, or the doctor warns them, or change of environment, they can stop or moderate, although he may find it difficult and troublesome and may even need medical attention. So at that point, I say, is that you? And sometimes people are like a bit confused. Well, yeah, that kind of is me. But then we bring it back to, can you stop or moderate? Because really, they wouldn't be sitting in front of us if they could stop or moderate. And then we've got number three. But what about the real alcoholic? Now, I've squiggly underlined that real alcoholic. There are 6 references to the real alcoholic. If you want, shall I read you out the page numbers where they are, if that's helpful, and you can jot it in and then find it after, unless you want me to show you where they are in the book. I can just say them out loud. So the first one is on page 21, which we're on. Then we've got one on page 23. So is it helpful if we go there together, or do you just want me to read out the lines? What's most helpful? Okay, I will just read them out. So on page 23, then we've got 2 references on page 30. And we've got one on 31. And then we've got another one on 35. So I'll just read those out again. The real alcoholic, page 21, 23, 30, and there's 2 references on 30, 31, and 35. So we're going to read this bit, but the reason I actually went and found all of those real alcoholics is because they're really trying to help us understand what is the difference between the real alcoholic and the moderate or hard drinker. The people, you know, we need to understand that distinction. I need to really fully concede to my innermost self that I am the real alcoholic. I'm utterly hopeless and completely powerless and completely unmanageable without a spiritual solution. So it says, what about the real alcoholic? He may start off as a moderate drinker. He may or may not become a continuous hard drinker. But at some stage of his drinking career, he begins to lose all control. There we go, lose all control of his liquor consumption once he starts to drink. So again, this is talking about the allergy, isn't it? He's lost control. So this is the mental obsession and the allergy. But once he starts to drink, he completely can't manage at all. So we won't go there, but I've just put a little cross-reference to page 24. Oh, actually, it doesn't make sense unless I say it. On page 23 and 24, right at the bottom, it says, he has lost control. At a certain point in the drinking of every alcoholic, he passes into the state where the most powerful desire to stop drinking is of absolutely no avail. So again, they're telling us over and over and over again, powerless, have no control, the real deal. Do I understand that about myself? Here is the fellow who has been puzzling you, especially in his lack of control. There it is again, lack of control. He does absurd, incredible, tragic things while drinking. I've put a question mark in there. Can you relate to that? Absurd means wildly unreasonable, illogical, inappropriate. Tragic means extreme distress and sorrow. Can you relate to doing tragic things, extremely distressing, not just to ourselves, but to our families and loved ones? He is a real Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, question mark. That was a book, wasn't it, that was turned into a play about one person who is like two people, completely different characters. He is seldom mildly intoxicated, question mark. So it says he is always more or less insanely drunk, question mark. Did you ever, just have one? I don't know. I don't understand this concept of just have one. I've also like squiggly underlined insanely drunk, because it's kind of getting me into this thinking of insanity. My drinking led me to that loneliness that only an alcoholic understands. It's insane that I stopped eating because I chose drink. It's insane that I stopped wanting to see my family because I wanted to drink. It's insane that I felt so lonely, yet I didn't want to see anyone because I wanted to drink. His disposition whilst drinking resembles his normal nature but little. So a disposition is somebody's inherent qualities of mind and character. Inherent qualities of mind and character. His disposition whilst drinking resembles his normal nature but little, question mark. Again, so this Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. How this substance, this poison, is like the, higher power, lower power. I lose my dignity, my my self-respect, my morals, my ethics, my boundaries, my love, my passion, all of that, my normal nature. Whoa, when I'm drinking, I'm completely different. He may be one of the finest fellows in the world, yet let him drink for a day and he frequently becomes disgustingly, that's a strong word, disgustingly and even dangerously antisocial, question mark. Is that you? Gosh, it's like when you look at it, that this starts us off, it tells us that this is a textbook. It's like my alcoholism and addiction is like textbook. This might not be everybody's story, but frequently becomes disgustingly and even dangerously antisocial. It's textbook progression, isn't it? Published 85 years ago. He has a positive genius for getting tight at exactly the wrong moment. Oh my gosh, can you relate to that? Question mark. Self-sabotage, powerlessness, unmanageability, particularly when some important decision made important decision must be made or engagement kept. Oh, I mean, I was just talking to a woman today who, was explaining that social services were involved in her life. And she was so nervous and anxious about it that she drank. And social services were involved because of her drinking. But this important decision or engagement was one unable to keep it. Powerless. He is often perfectly sensible and well balanced concerning everything except liquor. Question mark. Were we able to be well balanced concerning other things? This is the cunning, baffling, powerful bit about it. It says, but in that respect, he is incredibly dishonest and selfish. Question mark. Is that how we show up? Incredibly dishonest and selfish. Unfortunately, that was my truth. Lying about my drinking. I don't care about anything else. I need to know that I have that there. I need to know that this is, I've got it. That I'm going to be able to do what I need to do. He often possesses special abilities, skills, and aptitudes, and has a promising career ahead of him. Question mark. Aptitudes means a natural ability to do something. Can you relate to having hobbies, passions, enthusiasm, gifts, skills, natural qualities that got stripped away from alcoholism and addiction? It's textbook, isn't it? Ending up lonely, confused, baffled, powerless, repeating the same thing over and over again. He uses his gifts to build up a bright outlook for his family and himself, and then pulls the structure down on his head by a senseless series of sprees. Question mark. Ouch. Again, question mark means, can you relate to that? I used to like this sort of struggle, if you like. I used to strive. I realize now that this restless, irritable, and discontented, like Bill said in his story, trying to prove himself to the world. I'll build myself up. I'll build my family up. I've got a bright future, but I'm powerless, so I will pull the structure down on my head. And it's so confusing. Bill talks about it when he says by the next spring, he was living in his accustomed style. The mind and body are marvelous mechanisms because we can bounce back very quickly. But actually, the further down we get, you hear so many stories. It's happened to so many people. They think, oh, I'll just have one, and they go out and they don't come back. He is the fellow who goes to bed so intoxicated he ought to sleep the clock around. Question mark. That feeling of oversleeping but still feeling like exhausted, like you're so malnourished. You should be comatose by the amount that you've drank, but your sleep is broken, affected. It's horrific. It's suffering, isn't it? It's torturous. So can you see that even though they're talking about there is a solution, they're still really painting a picture about what the problem is. They really want, and then they've got another chapter after this one to say more about alcoholism. Yet early next morning, he searches madly for the bottle he placed the night before. Question mark. Have you ever hidden alcohol? Oh, it goes on to say, if he can afford it, he may have liquor concealed all over his house to be certain no one gets his entire supply away from him to throw down the waste pipe. Question mark. I don't know about you, but it was so reassuring to come into recovery and learn that I'm not the only one who does that. That's a common trait. Like, At one point, I lived alone. I don't know who I was hiding the booze from. It's so weird. It's such a weird thing to do, but then you realize you're not alone, that so many of us do that. As matters grow worse, he begins to use a combination of high-powered sedative and liquor to quiet his nerves so that he can go to work. Question mark. Did that happen to you? Did you start to mix and match? Did you start to need to drink to get to work? Then the day comes when he simply cannot make it and gets drunk all over again. Question mark. Oh, I remember the horrific times of calling in sick and just having that moment of relief, like, oh, right, I can carry on drinking. But then the anxiety builds up of, well, now I've got to face not going in. It's just going to be worse and worse, you know. Oh, this is the progression. Perhaps he goes to a doctor who gives him morphine or some sedative with which to taper off. Then he begins to appear at hospitals and sanitariums. Question mark. So, you know, obviously morphine, sedatives, there's so many prescription drugs that we are, you know, unfortunately prescribed, going to the doctors, telling them half of the story. I have anxiety. I can't sleep properly. I'm depressed. We tell them half the story. We don't say it's because I am drinking whatever amount. And we get that, you know, we get prescribed this stuff. And as a powerless alcoholic, I'm going to mix and match. You know, that might not be everybody's story, but this is a common progression. So it gets worse. It always gets worse. This is by no means a comprehensive picture of the true alcoholic, as our behavior patterns vary, but this description should identify him roughly. Well, I don't know about you, but I think that's a pretty bang on description. Again, remembering that they are now speaking to millions of people all around the world. So yes, the behavior patterns might vary, but I think they did a really good job of describing us and the progression of the illness very well in such a, you know, in such a short amount of pages. Why does he behave like this? If hundreds of experiences have shown him that one drink means another debacle, I never know if I say that word right, debacle, I don't know, with all its attendant suffering and humiliation, why is it that he takes that one drink? So next to hundreds, I don't know if it may be more. For some of us, it may be thousands, but hundreds of experiences. So again, just thinking about this insanity. We're still in step one here, this powerlessness and unmanageability, but there's elements of step two in here, right? Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Let's think about the insanity of hundreds of experiences have shown me that one drink means another debacle with all its attendant suffering and humiliation. Those words are quite powerful, aren't they? To suffer means to experience pain, to endure some kind of agony. Humiliation means my pride to be wounded, you know, to feel ashamed. Why is it that he takes that one drink? Why can't he stay on the water wagon? I've actually crossed out he, I've got my name there. So, you know, sometimes I read it out with sponsees, like I read their name, you know, and when I read it to myself, I'm like, why can't Rach stay on the water wagon? What has become of the common sense and willpower that he sometimes displays with respect to other matters? So again, remembering that cunning, baffling, powerful. I think that's on page 58. I'll just check it. Yeah, I'm just going to do a little cross-reference to page 58 there, because it's sort of 22. It's this insanity, isn't it? So perhaps there will never be a full answer to these questions. Opinions vary considerably as to why the alcoholic reacts differently from normal people. And there are so many different opinions, aren't there? Some people think it's hereditary, it's genetic. People think it's about trauma, about your upbringing, your class, all of this. Opinions vary considerably as to why the alcoholic reacts differently from normal people. I guess if you think about it though, nobody, well, maybe some people do question it, but I was just thinking about, a peanut allergy or a strawberry allergy. Do people really inquire as to why somebody would have that kind of allergy? I don't know. Maybe they would if it was genetic, but we are not sure why. Once a certain point is reached, little can be done for him. We cannot answer the riddle. What is the riddle? The riddle is the invisible line. How come once I've reached this certain point, that's it? No human power, no frothy emotional appeal from my friends, my family, my jobs, anyone, no self-will, no marshalling of my own will. Nothing nothing can be done. Again, I've just noticed that it says little can be done for him. There's another bit in the big book. Oh, it's on page 18 actually. And it talks, I'm just going to do another little cross-reference. Nothing can be done for him. On page 18, where it's italic, and it says, but the ex-problem drinker who has found a solution, who's properly armed with the facts about himself, can generally win the entire confidence of another alcoholic in a few hours. Until such an understanding is reached, little or nothing can be accomplished. So again, they're telling us over and over again that once we get to a certain point, there's no going back. We're people that have lost our legs, right? We know that while the alcoholic keeps away from drink, as he may do for months or years, he reacts much like other men. Okay, this bit is so important. We are equally positive that once he takes any alcohol, whatever, into his system, something happens both in the bodily and mental sense, which makes it virtually impossible for him to stop. Okay, so there's that body and mind again. And I've highlighted all of this bit, but I've also squiggly underlined underneath any alcohol, whatever, into his system. So they're talking about this allergy. And this paragraph is so important because I always bring newcomers to this, and I always bring anyone who relapses a lot, because they're saying that if we don't drink, if we keep away from drink, as we may do for months or years, we could be fine, right? But they are positive that once we have put any alcohol into our system, something happens in my mind and body that makes it virtually impossible for me to stop. Question mark. Is that my experience? Is that what's happened in my life? That's reiterating that I could have 3 months, 3 years, 30 years without a drink. I could react fine. I can be sober. As soon as I put that drop in, I kick off this allergy. And then it reinforces that. It says the experience of any alcoholic will abundantly confirm this. Question mark. So aren't we lucky now to be in a fellowship, a global fellowship, where I can log in to any meeting and I can hear people's lived experience and knowledge from all around the world that will abundantly confirm what I know to be true, that it doesn't matter how much sobriety I've got, I have a physical allergy, and if I put a drop of alcohol into my body, I'll have an abnormal reaction. I'll set off this phenomenon of craving. There we go. I think we're going to, actually, we've got 2 more minutes. I'll just read this, but I'll reread it next week. So these observations will be academic and pointless if our friend never took the first drink, thereby setting the terrible cycle in motion. Here we go. This is so important. This is like, it's so crucial, this bit. Therefore, the main problem of the alcoholic centers in his mind rather than in his body. So the reason that's so important is that there's loads of emphasis on the allergy, which is it's such a good fact. It's really important to let newcomers know that we have a physical allergy, that actually the problem of the alcoholic centers in my mind. It's my unmanageability that is the problem. When I'm sober, that takes me back to a drink. It's my warped perception of life that takes me back to a drink. It's my resentments, my number one offender, that takes me back to a drink. It's my fear, the evil and corroding thread, that takes me back to a drink. It's my conduct that harms others and harms myself, that centers in my mind. It's my selfishness and self-centeredness that centers in my mind. And that takes me back to a drink. So we will leave it there. Thank you. I'll just stop the recording.